Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at the Smith and Wesson M&P40. This is the older Gen 1 model, if you will, prior to the M&P 2.0s that came out. I thought I wanted to show this one because I've had it for quite a while. The cost of these are very inexpensive compared to any newer models that are out there, and compared to Glocks and things like that. But not only that, you can also get a lot of these in the secondary market. If we're looking at the M&P40, you've got a lot of aftermarket stuff that has come out from police departments that are either upgrading or changing out their guns, and they're all M&P40, or excuse me, they're all 40 Smith and Wesson. So there's a lot of these 40 Smith and Wesson guns that are out there on the market, and they can be had even lower if you're looking at the trade-in type models. So they're great handguns, they're fantastic, and they're very similar, almost identical to the M&P9s that are out there, just with a 40 caliber barrel and maybe a little different slide cuts, things like that. But overall, aesthetically, it looks identical to the M&P9. So let's take a look at it real quick. We won't go too depth, but I want people to see it. So if they're looking for something that can be inexpensive and had in the secondary market, if it's your first handgun, you're learning about stuff, maybe you want to try something out without spending $500 or $600, you can have these for a lot less than that. So stick around, we'll take a look at it on the tabletop a little bit closer. Alright, so let's take a little closer at the M&P40. This is a 15+1 handgun for capacity. You have a 15 round magazine. These are all steel magazines, except for the base plate, which is plastic. But they also work with 357 SIG. So if you have a 357 SIG barrel, you could actually interchange this and then also use the same magazines for 357 SIG. But these are 15 round, all steel, plastic followers, but they're fantastic. They're solid. I've had quite a few of them, and you can tell these have been fairly well used. They were used before I got them, and they're still being used now by me. So they're fantastic magazines. They are a little bit on the pricey side compared to a Glock, where you can have a plastic magazine. They're a little more inexpensive, but these do hold up very, very well. Just for those curious, here's the 40 Smith and Wesson. This is a home defense type hollow point. It'll spread open when you fire it, but it's a little bit bigger than the 9mm. It's actually a same diameter as the 10mm. Okay, one of the other things about 40 Smith and Wesson that people will talk about is recoil. It is a little more powerful of a round than a 9mm, but you also get a little bit different recoil impulse from the gun. After you shoot the cartridge, you're going to get a little bit more flip. That's really common with the 40 caliber round, is that most handguns you get a little bit more of a flip as opposed to a push. You do get the push, but you also get a little bit more muzzle flip on the handgun. I'll roll in some footage here of shooting. You may or not be able to see it. I don't find it to be much different than the 9mm, but it could be the weight of the slide, things like that. Different handguns are going to definitely perform differently, but what's common with the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge itself is you have a tendency to get more of a muzzle flip after a shot. But I'll roll in some footage for you to take a look at that as well. So it is a polymer framed, striker-fired handgun from Smith & Wesson. It does have a stainless steel barrel and slide that is covered in what Smith & Wesson has their Armor Night finish. This is their own proprietary finish, just like any other kind of nitride coating that goes on the steel. It goes into the steel a little bit. It's very solid. You can tell it's been worn quite a bit. This has been carried, it's been shot, and the finish is still in really great shape. We're going to work back to front on some of these things here. So let's go through the, let's start with the sights. Steel sights, these are replacement sights that were on here when I got the gun. These are night sights that came, because this was a law enforcement trade-in, these came with the night sights already in them. They're a little dim, but I do like the steel sights. Even the Smith & Wesson handguns that come out have the steel sights, and I'm a big fan of that. The only thing I don't like about this, and I've said it in other videos, and it's one of my key things I like to have on my handguns, is there's no real shelf here. The standard M&P sight has a little bit of a shelf on the back. This is great for if you're in a situation where you can't use your other hand to rack that slide, but maybe you can find a countertop, the back of your shoe, your belt, anything that you can catch on the back of that sight is going to allow you to rack that slide. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something I really like, and I like to kind of mention it all the time. Let's look at the grip here a little bit, and the frame. It is a polymer frame handgun. The back straps in this are interchangeable. You can twist this little pin back here, pop that out. So let's talk about the frame a little bit and the grip. It is a polymer frame handgun, so it's more of the plasticky type handgun. You've got back straps here that are interchangeable. This has got the medium back strap on it. You also have a small and a large, which will give you a little bit more of a swell here in the back. The large will be a little bit wider. Obviously the small will be a little bit thinner, but it really depends on your hand and what fits best for you. The medium always seems to work well for me, so that's what I go with. You also have some texturing here. It's not really rough. To me, it's okay. I mean, it works. If your hands are really wet and, you know, in a bad situation, if it's blood, if it's sweat, or whatever the situation is, I like it a little rougher than what it is. But it does work, and it's great for, you know, almost any application. It could be better. That's all I'm saying. It's not a bad finish, though, and it gives you a little bit of grip on the front and the back straps. One other thing to note about the Smith and Wesson M&P series is the grip angle. It's more of a 1911 angle, and it's more preferred by a lot of people. A lot of people like Glock as well. Glock has a little bit different angle on it. For me, this point's a little bit better, and I think that's why it's more comfortable. I love the way the grip fits into my hand. I love the little contour here that really just catches your hand in there. It's just a very comfortable handgun. But the fact that it's more of a 1911 style grip angle can make it better at pointability, shootability, if you will. Just without looking at the sights, when you point your handgun, it naturally points better for you. That's not to say it's the same for everybody. Some people like the Glocks, and you can adapt to any one of them that you decide to shoot. But a lot of people do like that 1911 style grip angle. The serrations on the M&Ps are very nice. I love the little fish scale. I like it better than if you're looking at a Glock or some of those where it's just a vertical cut. These have a little bit of like a fish scale type to them, and they're very grippy. They're easy to grab a hold of. I really like them a lot. I wish they had them up front a little bit more. The newer 2.0s do have a little bit here on the bottom of the frame, which to me almost seems like a waste. I would rather have them fully all the way up the top. But that being said, they are very, very good at really getting a good grip on it. No matter how you do it, they're very easy to grab, and they hold on tight. Even if your hands are wet, again, it's going to grab onto there very nicely. All right, moving on, we've got the slide lock, slide release. And on the M&Ps, they are ambidextrous out of the gate. So you can buy a stock handgun. You've got ambidextrous on both sides. You can hold it open. You can release it from there. And actually this one does a lot better than my M&P 9 does as far as a slide release, swiping it off. It does a very good job. Left-handed, you can also do the same thing. It's got a slide lock, and you can swipe it off. You know, I've had different things about these. The M&P 9, again, it doesn't swipe off real easy. This 40, maybe it's because it's well broken in. It does a really good job. And sometimes on the left-hand side, it's a little bit weaker because of the way they cut across for that slide release. It's not as much direct tension on that slide release, but this one seems to work very well. Next up, we got the magazine release. This is ambidextrous, so if you're a left-hander, this is great. You can move this right over to the other side very, very easily. Move forward, we've got your takedown pin, takedown switch, whatever you want to call it on the M&P. But this is what you're going to use to take down, take the slide off, and clean your handgun. Next, we got a 3-position rail, which is great if you're adding lights or lasers. You got a home defense handgun, you want to put a light here on the front of it for at night. It's a great little way to attach it on there. One of the things I like about the M&P series is it's a little bit bigger here in the trigger guard. Gives you a little bit more room in there if you are wearing gloves or something like that. You've got a little bit more room in here. That being said, we'll go move into the trigger. The M&P style triggers are a little bit different than a lot of the others. You've got this hinge trigger here. You may or may not be able to see that in the camera, but when the hinge moves out of the way, it's more like, you know, Glock has a blade here in the center of the trigger. This has a hinge trigger where it's going to move that little safety off the frame and allow you to pull that trigger. Just another safety on the handgun. But as far as the trigger pull goes, you know, it's a little squishy. The older models, the M&P 2.0s are a little bit better. Again, if you're looking for self-defense or home defense handgun, something like that, these triggers are just not a problem at all. It's just, you know, when you start getting into more specifics or you really get into your handguns, you may want to clean it up and make it a better trigger. Apex makes some great triggers. I've had them on other Smith and Wesson handguns, and they're fantastic. They can make, you know, flat, smooth. They're not this little hinge type trigger, but they all can make it a lot cleaner in your trigger. So you've got a little bit of take up here. It's not much. And then it's just kind of a pull through. It's kind of plasticky, but you know, it's not a clear defined wall. You just kind of pull through it and you've got it. As far as the reset goes, not very audible. You can barely hear it at all to know where it is. You can't even feel it very well if you're somebody that looks at that. If you're a new shooter, you're probably not going to be worried about this. But as far as that reset, it's not very tactile. It's not very loud. But once it comes out there, it's the same pull coming back through. Like I mentioned before on the frame, you know, here's your magazine well. It is beveled a little bit, widened. It's not huge, but it's, you know, it works very sufficiently. You do have, with the steel magazines, one thing I like is it does fall free. You tend to have that a little bit more often when you're looking at steel magazines, that ability just to fall free when you press that mag release, which is very helpful for reloads. If you're in a stressful situation, you don't want to be trying to pull that out of there if you don't have to. You want to be able to just drop it and insert your new mag and be ready to go. So, very nice mag well. I love the flare that's here at the bottom. One of the things you're going to see with the magazine is it's a little bit wider at the base than it is on the handgun. It just kind of keeps with that flare that comes out. Which, if you needed to strip it out, it gives you a little bit extra there to grab onto. If there was ever an issue where your gun jammed, you could actually grab that magazine and rip it out if you had to. Just another nice little feature. I wish there was a little bit more, but it's got something there for you to grab onto. And I guess one more thing on it is you do have a loaded chamber indicator here, where you can peek through that hole at the top and see if there's a round inside the chamber. It's, you know, not the cleanest for me. If you really want to do it, you should know whether it's loaded or not. If you need to check, drop your magazine, check it, and redo it. I mean, that's the safest and most easy way to make sure that your handgun is loaded. You can do press checks, you can do a lot of different things, but it does have that indicator there nonetheless. All right, taking down the M&P is really simple. You're going to just lock your slide back. You're going to rotate this pin here, release the slide, pull the trigger, and off your slide comes. Inside, it looks like any other striker fired pistol. You've got your just trigger group here, and your metal slide here for your slide to ride on, your rails. Inside, we've got a captured stainless steel recoil spring. So your stainless steel guide rod is surrounded and captured this spring, so it's easy, one piece, easy to clean. I like that. Barrel comes out very easily. Slide it forward just a hair, pull it out. You can clean your barrel, you can clean inside your handgun. Assembly is just as easy. You drop your barrel back in, slide it back in until it pops into place. Take your guide rod and recoil spring, tuck it up in the front, bring it right behind that lug of your barrel. To make sure it's straight when you put it back in there, you know, slide over a little bit if you have to. Take your frame and your slide, slide it right back on. You can put your slide lock on. This one's pretty well worn, so when I put it back on, this lever rotates automatically back into place. But normally, on a newer handgun, you're going to lock that slide back, rotate that back into place, release your slide, and just test your firing. And that's it. Very easy to take apart, very easy to take down. There's no loose pieces, no pins that you're going to lose. So I love it. It's a great handgun. And that's just a quick overview of the M&P40 on the tabletop. So there you have it. There's the M&P40, again, the Gen 1, not the 2.0. Fantastic handgun. Like I said, if you're looking for something new, maybe it's your first time, maybe you're looking to get a 40 Smith and Wesson caliber handgun. These are great models. I love the Smith and Wessons. The M&P series are one of my favorites. They are fantastic and very reliable handguns. This was a law enforcement trade-in, so you can get these very inexpensively. Maybe you're looking for a truck gun, maybe you're looking for a different caliber to keep in your collection. So, you know, when we have ammo challenges like we had a few years back with the 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson was a little bit easier to get. Although it's a little more expensive, it's also got a little bit more power. Maybe it makes a great home defense handgun, good truck gun, something like that. Especially buying it used, you may have not worrying about it getting beat up if you're one of those type of people, but it is a great tool. It is a fantastic firearm. So if you're looking for something in 40 Smith & Wesson, definitely look on the secondary market. Definitely look at the older M&Ps because they're fantastic handguns. Anyway, I appreciate you everybody watching. Please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Hit the notification bell if you'd like. If you've got any comments or questions, please put them in the comments below. I try to answer almost all of them that I can. And until we see you again, happy shooting. Take it easy.